of how to start a side hustle. And yes, I have my whole life kind of used side hustling as a way to help initially fill gaps. And I'll share with that shortly. But I'm going to just jump straight to my my presentation. And yes, and my real name is Gabrielli. It's an unusual name. My dad's name is Gabe, if it's any indication where it may have come from. So I am really going to focus today on the fact that not always do things go as planned. Right now, we're in the middle of 2 global crises, for example. A lot of businesses are failing right now. A lot of entrepreneurs are struggling right now, but out of adversity comes opportunity. And so smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. In the most trying times, that's when you have an opportunity to shine if you so choose. So a little bit about me. I'm a lifelong learner and entrepreneur. I always loved school from a young age. I was working, interestingly, I was working 3 jobs. I learned when I came to school at Florida State University that I was going to need to pay my own way through school. Now, I had a really odd life up till then, growing up in a broken home, living half the year in extreme poverty, and the other half the year traveling Europe, but not in a glamorous way, kind of backpacking, from hopping from country to country on a train, camping, you know, just a completely different lifestyle. What I learned between the 2 parents that was different was one had an education and the other one did not. And so to me, education was my ticket out of poverty. So I went to Florida A&M University and Florida State University as an undergrad. Loved both experiences. And initially I started working in fast food. I was working like midnight shift at Hardee's, and I was working as a telemarketer and just anything that would help pay the bills. But I went to my professor, my major professor as an undergrad was Dr. Donna Nudd, who's still there at the College of Communication at FSU. And I went to her and I said, you know, I know your program is very competitive. What do I need to do to get in? And she asked me what I was doing for work, and I told her, and she said, you've got to start working in your field. And I said, but nobody will hire me. I don't have any experience. She said, just start cold calling people, see what happens. So I did. And I was very shy at the time, believe it or not. I was an extremely shy person who thankfully college kind of brought it out of me that I didn't have to be that shy and insecure. But I called everybody and everyone said no, until I got to WFSU TV and WFSU FM. Both of them gave me a chance and granted me an interview, and I got both jobs. And that's when I started working in my field at the time. So I got a lot of experience early on. I came to college when I was 17 years old. And that experience really helped me kind of stand above my peers at a young age. As a teenager, I opened my first business, and it was a video production company that I had for 10 years. It evolved as my education evolved and as my experience evolved. So it went from that into web design and development, and then ultimately to what it is now. I'm a leadership coach, speaker, and trainer, and I love helping people become better versions of themselves. So initially it was a home-based business. Now I'm sitting in my leadership development center. I started out 5 years ago, decided to make the leap from home-based business to renting the smallest office in this building that I'm sitting in right now. And I'm not a big office person. I don't like offices. In fact, right now I'm in the conference room, and this is really where I prefer to have my office. But I started out renting the smallest building. It was a huge leap of faith for me. And what happened was a lot of positive things came out of that risk that I took in renting an office. Within a year, I almost lost the building. And so I agreed to lease the entire building. So I became a landlord, had never done that before. And then another year later, I was in the middle of the Galapagos Islands scuba diving, teaching underwater photography And I got off the boat after 10 days and my phone blew up, and it was the building owner telling me he was going to have to sell the building. So I took another huge leap of faith, and I actually ended up buying the building. And so this is my leadership development center. I don't regret it at all. It's been awesome. As a matter of fact, thanks to being very thrifty and doing things in a way that would lead me to success, I actually paid off the building last November. So you just never know what might happen. I also have a leadership academy for professionals. It's limited to 12 people. I try to keep it to 10 diverse people from all walks of life. It's a year-long program with mentoring, coaching, and so on. And then I have a nonprofit organization. You heard Harley mention Scuba. It is a scuba organization that benefits people with disabilities. So I teach able-bodied people as well as people with disabilities how to scuba dive. And I volunteer with a lot of other nonprofit organizations. Normally this time of year, we're at Rotary Youth Camp working with kids with special needs. I award a lot of scholarships to veterans. I've awarded 4 just this year. And it's really not about scuba, to be honest with you. It's about leadership. And so I use scuba diving as a tool to help people overcome fears and self-limiting beliefs to get out of their comfort zone and into their strength zone. On the right there is my golden retriever. He's 10 years old. We also are very, very active in the animal therapy program. And so we volunteer until COVID, of course. We volunteer at the hospital. Weekly, we were volunteering with Alzheimer's patients. And then we're also one of the first teams sworn into the court system to work with kids who have been through really horrible, abusive situations. So I have a couple, things going on now. I did start out working for other people, and this was a side hustle, but ultimately it became my life. So what is a side hustle and why have one? A side hustle typically is done in conjunction with working for somebody else. And why have one? In some cases, it's to supplement your income. In some cases, it's to grow your passion. In some cases, it's kind of to explore what really do you want to get out of life. And so for me, it became apparent early on that I didn't really want to work for other people. And I have worked for a lot of other people while working in my business, but ultimately, after leaving the U.S. Military Academy, where I worked on my dissertation, coming back to Tallahassee and working for Florida State University, I decided that was going to be my very last employer. And I haven't looked back since then. So it's been a while. Now, you probably heard of a lot of typical kind of ideas for side hustles. Things like go through your closets and pick out clothes that you haven't worn in a long time. Sell things online, sell things you're not using. Driving for Uber, Lyft, or any of the other organizations, renting out an extra room on Airbnb, getting paid for creating content on social media. It could be Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or anything like that. Teaching online courses. There's a lot of different platforms you can do that. Creating and selling handmade goods. And again, a lot of different places to do that. And then doing micro jobs on sites that enable you to do freelance work. These are kind of typical things. But for me, earning extra money like I was doing in the beginning with my little side hustles, it wasn't fulfilling. And so what I've learned through my life is that it's really not about the money. It's about the passion. And so if you find your passion and you combine it with skill and you combine it with hard work and you really do a good job, you're going to succeed in whatever you do. And so why work for other people if you really have that passion to work for yourself? So the most important thing I think you need to do is brand yourself. Who are you? What are you about? What do you want people to think of you when they hear your name? And so branding is a big part of it. I do think that some people do too many side hustles and they water themselves down. I have certain people that I've known that they're doing like 6 different things at once, to the point where I'm like, okay, they're involved in another network marketing strategy and they're inviting me into their Tupperware party and their, you know, their candle thing, and it's too much. I think, you know, that if you're going to do side hustles, you want to be strategic in what you're doing and try to align it with your brand. And so initially, I think when you're young, it's okay to be all over the place, but ultimately you want to focus on what's really important to you. So I wanted to feature just a couple of local side hustle businesses. And the first one is one of my Leadership Academy participants, Key Spencer. She works for the city of Tallahassee. And on the side, she has this gig that she's had for over 10 years now. And she makes logos and all kinds of graphic design things. It's Pick My Brain Design Company. And I asked her, what advice would you give to new entrepreneurs? And she said, go for it and invest in your brand. You can't expect someone to invest in you if you don't first invest in yourself. I encourage you to jump into what inspires you. I love that. And she has a lot of interaction on her social media, and you know, she's doing a promo right now where she's giving away free logos. So it's pretty neat to see. Now, how many of you have heard of this local treasure, Girlie's Lemonade and Sweets? Anyone? Also known as the Oreo guys. Am I the, anyone? Hello?
I know the Oreo guys, but I didn't know they made lemonades too.
Nope, never heard of Girlies.
Okay, so they are a viral sensation right now. If you haven't heard of them, you're going to hear about them, okay? And so I'll tell you why. These are two brothers who in 2019 decided to start their own side hustle. Now, they're already entrepreneurs. Their names are Dee and Marquis Williams. They're here in Tallahassee. And they found themselves in financial troubles and decided to become entrepreneurs after finding their grandmother's recipe book. And her name was Grandma Girlie. And so initially they started with just a small lemonade stand, but they ended up being so successful that they expanded to sweets, and they're known for their fried Oreos. They are on the corner of, is it Monroe and it's on the south side. I can't remember exactly where right now, but they are so popular that I belong to a group called Tallahassee Foodies. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, for people who like food.
Love
and foodies have shown this, this business a lot of love. And so almost every day there's postings from people saying they got their fried Oreos, and not only how delicious they are, but how great the service is, and how these guys are hardworking and they go above and beyond, and you'll notice that they have messages too. And so so one of the brothers is wearing a shirt saying decreasing incarceration. They have a sign by their food truck that says something along the lines of I'm not selling drugs. You know, they really promote a message of being good people, being good citizens. And as a result, the Tallahassee Foodies community, which is 20,000 people strong right now, has embraced them. Well, on Sunday, one of the brothers was working and it was really hot, and he ended up becoming very ill, and they had to call an ambulance. And it was, everybody in the community was very concerned for them, and someone started a GoFundMe so they can get their own air-conditioned food truck. And they're doing great. Now they have other side hustles as well. One of the brothers does apparel and the other one does hair. But to me, they are the epitome. If you have not heard about them, I'm telling you, you gotta go try their fried Oreos, and then you'll see what people really love are not just the sweets and the lemonade, but people love the brothers. They're just good people who go above and beyond for anyone who comes there. So they're very successful. Now, I mentioned before about adversity. I love this Native American proverb, which says, the soul would have no rainbow had the eyes no tears. I believe that I personally would not wish adversity on anyone. I've experienced a lot of it in my life, but it has made me better. So my story, I mentioned a little bit before about living two different lives. Well, when I opened my own business, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a clue. Nobody taught me anything. Nobody taught me how to manage finances. I found myself trying to pay my way through school, working 72 hours a week, using a credit card to try to get money in order to pay rent. And ultimately, I found myself homeless. Now, I didn't know it was homeless at the time. I was living in this little old EXP, a little two-seater car. And I was a teenager, and I didn't know that it was homeless because I had a roof over my head and I could go to school and shower. And, you know, my dad recently sent me this picture, and I thought I would be sad seeing it, but it actually made me happy because I realized that my story is really about overcoming adversity. I had a choice when I was homeless to stay that way, you know, to become a victim for the rest of my life, or to do something about it. And I chose to do something about it. And I hustled and I worked and I got myself out of poverty to the point where I paid off my 10 years of student loans in 3 years, still sending money home to my mother who was struggling. I learned how to be really thrifty. And part of the side hustle isn't just about getting other jobs. It's about being thrifty. It's about being smart with your money. You know, while a lot of other people were out partying and everything, I was sacrificing. And so before the call started, somebody was talking about their love of tequila and everything else and partying with the fraternity. I didn't have that experience in school. My experience was really about working hard in school and in work to come out on the other side. And now I'm driving my dream car. It's a Tesla Model S. And I just think, how ironic is it that cars have always been a huge part of my family and me. And, you know, I have a 66 Mustang also that's been in my family since it was new. And here I am driving my dream car, which I never thought I would do. I'm 100% debt free, paid off my house, paid off my building, all by living very thriftily and then working hard. And so if I can do it, anyone can do it. So here is what I found really is the formula for success with side hustling. And yeah, you can get all these side jobs and do things that you don't really like doing. And you can work a job where you're really not happy. People are so comfortable in this world. And I really think it's about being uncomfortable that you find success. So if you combine passion, figure out what you're passionate about, figure out what lights your fire, what keeps you awake at night because you're so excited about doing it. Combine your passion with your skills and talents. Skills and talents can be developed. So maybe your passion is something that you don't yet have the skills and talents in. Take classes, get experience, work on those skills and talents. Then have a heart of service to others. You know, when I talked about girlies, it's really about the guys more than the food. Everyone loves the food, but it's really, if you see postings on social media, which I guarantee you now that you're aware of this business, you're gonna see it. It's really about the fact that they go above and beyond. Next is ethics. It's tax day here in America, right? You do have to, you know, comply with all the paperwork and that kind of thing. Initially, I started as a sole proprietorship, and then I ended up, you know, doing a lot more research and determining that the best needs for me was being an S Corp. So both my nonprofit and my for-profit businesses are S Corps. But ethics all around. I mean, you want to be an upstanding person. You want to under-promise and over-deliver. You want to really show that you have the ethics and the work ethic to be a good person. Next is hard work. You know, you've got to work really, really hard. And initially, especially as an entrepreneur, you're working way harder than all your friends that are employed by other people. There's no sick leave, there is no vacation, there's really not a lot of benefits initially of working for yourself until you get to a place where you're able to buy your own health insurance and take care of yourself. But I can tell you, of all the bosses I've had, I've never had one that's been more understanding when I want to take days off, but who's also continued to make me work hard, and that's myself. And finally, it's sacrifice. I mentioned before that when all my friends were going out and partying and everything, I was working. sacrifice is involved in order to really be successful. So you can make a lot of money and you can blow a lot of money. I didn't blow it at all. I saved. I drove every car I had till the wheels fell off. I don't go out for meals or coffee or anything else. I make everything. I save a lot of money in doing that. A lot of sacrifice, but ultimately that is what results in success. So I want to end with a quote that obstacles don't have to stop you. This is a Michael Jordan quote. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it, go through it, or work around it. So obstacles are always going to be present when you are an entrepreneur or when you have a side hustle. But ultimately, it's about how much you want it and what you're willing to do to get there. So that's all I have. I welcome your questions now.
I actually have a question to start. What kind of side hustle would you recommend for someone who doesn't have any prior experience?
I really think that it's important to figure out what you're passionate about. So the first thing I would say is, what do you love? For example, if you love animals, maybe your side hustle is being a pet sitter or a pet walker or something like that. We've got at least 2 photographers here. If photography is your passion, then how do you hone that skill? You just keep doing it as much as possible. And ultimately, you could find gigs doing what's important to you. When I had my video production company for 10 years, I was doing a lot of weddings. And so I started out mainly doing weddings, and every single Saturday, pretty much for 10 years, I was working. And again, that's another kind of sacrifice, but that's what I did. And it ended up kind of evolving into, I was doing documentaries and I was doing press conferences and lots of other things, but it started with doing weddings. So
that's awesome. And we can open it up to anybody that has any questions, personal questions about your own side hustle, general questions about Gabrielle and stuff that she's doing, anything that you're curious about.
I have a question.
Sure, Jalen.
So I've been told that, finding that thing, I guess that potential, business or career path is all about finding the intersection between what you're passionate about, what your skills are, what can make you money, and what the world needs. So how do you reconcile with something that you're passionate about, but not too sure how you can make it valuable or profit off of it?
Well, first off, I believe most of that. The thing I disagree with is that I believe with all my heart that if you have passion and skill and you're innovative, the money will follow. And so I think if you really find opportunities, right now many businesses are pivoting, many are failing. Entrepreneurs that were doing great are not doing well, but guess what? The ones who have adapted to this new environment are doing phenomenally, like incredible. And so I think if you really sit down with what are your passions, what do you ultimately want to do, if you could kind of tie in what you ultimately want to do, maybe with some of the international stuff, with what you're doing now, and start getting experience early on, it's going to set you apart. And even if you didn't end up being an entrepreneur for the rest of your life, you ended up working for somebody else, that experience that you get as an entrepreneur in your field is going to help you stand above your peers the way my experience did at an early age.
Thank you.
I've got a question related to WFSU. I too started at WFSU TV.
Wow.
And I was wondering, I have known a number of entrepreneurs that have initially started out in communication or senior executives. I wonder if you could speak to being forced as an introvert, as I was, to get into communication and getting that coaching, how that affects your career trajectory and or the opportunity to side hustle or become an entrepreneur?
That's a great question. First, my own personal quote about life is that true transformation to leadership begins when people overcome fears and self-limiting beliefs to get out of their comfort zone and into their strength zone. And so like you, I was an introvert. I was very insecure, very, very insecure. I think that communication provided a tremendous foundation. And I want to say that WFSU FM, I was working with two guys. One had multiple sclerosis and was confined to a wheelchair. The other one had terminal cancer. And these two guys loved their work. They were awesome. They wanted me to succeed. They wanted to bring me out of my shell. I started in production because I knew it was comfortable, and they wanted to get me uncomfortable because they knew that I wanted to be a news reporter. And so on one of the very first days, they sat me down with a microphone and they said, "We want you to read this public service announcement." And it truly sounded something like this. "This program has been brought to you by the John D. and MacArthur Foundation." And they played it back and I was like, "Oh, it's just terrible." They said, "Now say it again with a smile." And I said, "People on the radio can't hear my smile." And they said, "Want to bet?" I said, "Okay. This program has been brought to you by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation." And they played it back and I was like, that doesn't even sound like me. How is that? Anyway, a mentorship is huge. These were informal mentors of mine. They were my bosses. But what they did for me was show me that despite the obstacles that they had, which was their physical health, their attitude was everything. And they brought me out of my shell by getting me uncomfortable. And oddly enough, I'm going through chemo now for leukemia. And I really believe with all my heart that attitude is everything. And so I was exposed to toxins at ground zero after September 11th. And I see other people who have recent diagnoses and they're just so sad and they're shocked and they're not doing anything. And I know that research shows that the more active you are and the more physical and mentally engaged that you are, the more success you're going to have with healing. And so for me, that's always kind of been my attitude, is just life is too short not to have fun and to get uncomfortable. And so communication is a great foundation for any career.
Well, thank you for those comments. And it turns out that we have something else in common. I too am a survivor. It's a club nobody wants to join, but everybody's honored to be an alumni of. So I wish you the best on your journey.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, glad you're here.
Gabrielle, I have a question for you. Talk about working a side hustle that is related to your main hustle or your job, right? Where you can pick up things on the side that maybe you're an expert in something and they say, well, can you work for us on the side?
Ethically, you have to be careful, right? So when you do something like that, maybe it's something that you're employed to do and you have a side hustle that's the same kind of thing. You've just got to ethically put it out there. Let it be known that I have this small business on the side. Make sure that you don't ever have conflict with it. I have seen situations where people have taken clients away from their companies. That's not cool, you know. No. But really, I think it's about ethics more than anything, and being very open with the fact that you are going to still do 100% of the work when you need to do it. I did employ somebody once, and it was at a television station, and his side, and he's still in business. He was truly the worst employee I've ever had. I won't say his name. He was awful. He would not show up for work. He would be doing his side hustle during our work, and I would have to go cover for him. And he was the kid of a legislator, and he got away with everything. And I was just so frustrated. And you know, don't be that guy. Whatever you do, be on the up and up about what you're doing, and make sure that your schedule is not conflicting with your work schedule.
Yeah, well, my side hustle is always meant I would get up at 5 in the morning to write the 20 pages that were due. Then I'd go to work. But
Yeah.
a lot of times you leave a job and you stay behind because you're doing something. And with me, I was data analytics. So they hired me to do the analytics after I left because nobody else could. Where is your company, your building?
It's near Mahan and Capitol Circle, right behind Honey Baked Hams.
Okay, I know where you are. And do you have classes there? Do you hold?
I do. I have classes all the time, but now they're virtual, right?
Right. Sure.
Yes. I actually, before all the COVID stuff, I was doing monthly leadership lunch and learns where I would invite people, and it was free, and I would feed everybody. I love to cook, and we'd have topics like put your dreams to the test, 10 questions to help you see it and seize it, and just a lot of things related to where are you now and where do you want to be and what do you need to do to get there.
And how do you link leadership with some of the calls for quality reporting or quality work? And there's a whole quality thing going on. It tries to strive to drive sort of work value down to the bottom end to get everybody working really well. And how does that, can you incorporate that in your leadership discussion?
I do, and I really think leadership is everything. I think a lot of people misconstrue what leadership means. All leadership is positively influencing other people. That's all it is. And so you don't have to be in a position of leadership to be a great leader.
Right, okay, good point.
Yeah, so I tie it into everything. And it's interesting because when I first started my scuba business, the nonprofit, I kept both completely separate, thinking they were disconnected, thinking it would water down my brand by being a scuba instructor. And what I found was that I kept referring my leadership clients to scuba because I thought there's something missing. They need to stretch themselves a little more. And what I realized is that they're so completely connected in different ways, but it's really about getting people from where they are to where they want to be, getting them uncomfortable, helping them overcome fears, and just to be the best version of themselves. So I intertwine a lot of leadership lessons in my scuba as
Good.
well.
That's really nice to hear. And just a personal question, if I may. You worked with Donna Nudd in communication?
Yes.
What year were you in at FSU?
It was in the 90s.
Early 90s?
Yes.
Did you take my mass media class?
I did.
You did indeed.
I did. Oh my goodness. You look so
Okay.
different.
Well, good to see you. I think I had a beard at that point.
Didn't you have a lot of hair then? Like
I
beard?
did have a lot of hair then, yes, and it wasn't white. Probably.
Wow. Small world.
I thought I recognized you. That was really good.
Wow.
Done very well. I'm glad communication helped.
It
That's
helped
amazing.
tremendously. I had so many great professors, including you. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't a great professor, but I remember you in class. I said, I know that name. I know it. So when you started talking, I said, that's it. I got it.
I was very shy then, though. You probably didn't, I was very kind of introverted and mousy. It didn't really. Donna Ned's class is one of the classes that helped me come out of my shell too, though. So.
Did you work with Mickey Faust?
No, I didn't, but I'm a big supporter of theirs. And Terry was our substitute teacher a lot in the College of Communication, and I just loved her. And so, yeah, they were great.
Good. Good. Well, good to see you again.
You too.
I've got a question related to the platforms that allow side hustling to exist, like Odesk, in which you have an opportunity for a worldwide marketplace to shop your skills. I wonder if you had comments about platforms like that.
Well, there's a lot of different opportunities from Odesk to Upwork to, Freelancer. There's so many of them. I don't really have an opinion about which one is better because I don't need to use those platforms anymore. But what I would encourage anyone to do that is looking for side hustles through these platforms is to try a job or two on each one and determine what's the best for them, because some do take bigger cuts than others and some have more restrictions than others. So, and I kind of feel the same way about anything else online. For example, where you sell your goods, whether it's eBay or Facebook Marketplace or Etsy or any of those. I think the same goes. You really have to kind of figure out what your niche is and what's going to give you the best bang for your buck.
As a mentor, my understanding is one of the values in teaching and coaching is that it gives you unique insights for continued learning and improvement. What kinds of things are you learning as you coach?
What I'm learning more than anything is that regardless of where people are in their lives, they share the same struggles. And so I've had CEOs of international companies as clients. I've had, custodial staff as clients. I've had a wide variety of people, and people are people, regardless of their positions. Many people carry a lot of, I'm not a therapist, but I'm telling you, many people carry a lot of hurt, and they carry a lot of pain from years ago, and they've kind of carried it with them, and it's unresolved. And through discussions and coaching and confidentiality, I help them kind of figure out what's really holding them back. And it's often not what they thought it was. It's something from a long time ago that's unresolved. And if they can figure that out and be honest with what's really going on, I can help them find ways to overcome. And that's, to me, the most powerful thing, because I've seen people at all different levels and all different jobs and different stages of their lives figure out what's really holding them back and then crush it,
Is there any practice that you recommend doing like at home to increase your leadership skills?
At home, I think with life in general, if you want to improve your leadership skills, you need to just step up, step out, step up when it comes to opportunities. For example, if you're a volunteer somewhere, step up to the plate when others won't volunteer to do things that others wouldn't do. Step out of your comfort zone. Give yourself a chance. Even if you're at home, you can do these things. There are different platforms you can use where you can connect with people in different ways and take things to the next level. So I really think that leadership is something that everybody should be working on, just being a positive influence on not just other people, but on themselves. So we're our own worst critics, and people need to stop being so hard on themselves and start giving themselves some grace, especially now, especially with all that we're going through. We're going through multiple traumas right now, and trauma of even coronavirus combined with the trauma of racial injustice combined with any past traumas, I think is bringing out a lot of anxiety for people, a lot of uncertainty, but at the same time, out of adversity comes opportunity. And so if you can channel that negative energy into something positive, and at home you could do journaling or yoga or anything to kind of channel your energy. To me, I'm a big fan of exercise as a way of, getting your negative energy out and getting the blood flowing and sweating out the toxins in your body and in your thoughts to become a better version of yourself and be positive.
Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on that thought. A lot of people think that the working and having side hustles and eating well and exercising are mutually exclusive. Talk about how they're mutually beneficial and the one creates energy for the other, if you would.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, I mentioned that I love to cook, and I cook healthy stuff and I take care of myself. I really do think that everything is interconnected, and so many people are doing decent at the side hustle, but then they're blowing money on partying and and not taking care of themselves. And so I think to be a good leader and to positively influence others, you need to be a good leader to yourself first and take care of yourself. And whenever you make bad choices, including about your food, about the lack of exercise, about those kind of things, when you realize that you're self-sabotaging, then you can hopefully nip it in the bud and realize that everything is interconnected. You have to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, and then financially. So one of the things about, and I said financially, one of the things about side hustling I mentioned is that finances are a big part of being successful. And I do not focus on money at all now, because I'm at a place where I have made sure that I don't have any debt. I don't have to make a lot of money. I don't care to make a lot of money. It's just money. It's not my focus. That being said, I'm still just as careful with the way that I spend it, other than splurging on a Tesla, which really was a smart choice for me. I think that finances, part of it is negotiate. Most people don't realize that bills are negotiable. Most bills are negotiable. And so don't throw money away. Don't throw money away eating fast food. Don't throw money away on your bills when you could contact, you know, your cell phone company, your insurance company, whatever, and negotiate down your bills. So yeah, finances are huge. Health is huge. I do think that if you're dealing with any kind of chronic illness or pain, when you have physically taken care of yourself, you're going to get through it a lot better. And I learned that people on Monday, there was a study published with the kind of leukemia that I have, that they studied 190 leukemia patients who got COVID, and there was a 40% mortality rate. So 40% of the kinds of patients like me died from COVID. And I was telling my dad this, and he's like, but you're different. You're out there, you're active, you're taking care of yourself. And I said, you know what, you're right. I probably stand a better chance, you know, because I am taking care of myself. And I think anyone who's been through chronic pain, injury, illness knows that if you're healthy, you're going to probably come out of it better than if you weren't taking care of yourself.
I think that's a great comment. And if you take a look at normal bell-shaped curves, whether it's mortality related to COVID or success as an entrepreneur, I think the goal is to be an outlier and on the outer edge of that bell-shaped curve, because you don't have to be in the middle necessarily.
Agreed.
I think we have about 5 minutes left, so we have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. If anyone has anything that they want to ask.
I had one more question. So my mom instilled in me very young that you can do anything you want in this world. And I kind of really took that to heart, because I feel like I could do like anything, and I just like always, you know, try and do everything, and it sometimes, you know, has its disadvantages. But for someone who was privileged enough to go to an awesome high school that really gave me the opportunity to dive into anything and everything that I was interested in, what advice would you give for someone that is kind of all over the place in terms of what their passions are and what skill sets they have? What advice would you give to them so they won't be watered down, like you were saying before?
Well, the first thing I want to say is about the first part of the question, with the first part of the statement where you said your mother instilled in you that you can do anything. I think that's awesome. There's a quote, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And so if you believe you can do it, you can do it. I absolutely believe that with all my heart. Next, I have a lot of passions, in case you haven't figured it out. When I say watered down, I mean don't start exploring in areas that aren't your passion. So like the network marketing and the, you know, if it's not your passion, someone else's passion, why grow their passion? It's okay to have multiple interests. I love to combine things. So what I really like to do with my coaching clients is figure out what are their passions and how can we intertwine them in a way that sets them apart, in a way that creates a niche that wasn't there before. And I found that with many different fields. And so I would encourage you to pick your top 3 things that you love to do, that you're absolutely passionate about. And know that your path doesn't have to be a straight line. your path can change. You just want to enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it. So pick your top 3 things that you're passionate about right now and find a way to live at least one of those, and maybe even combine a couple of those into a side hustle. And then if you ever feel like it's not your passion anymore, like for me, video production, after a while, when all the family would start inviting me to things and telling me to bring my camera everywhere, I was like, okay, I'm done. I really don't want to do this anymore. This isn't fun anymore. If you ever feel that way, it's okay to just move on. It's okay to change, to evolve, and even to develop a new passion that lands you down a different path. But I think more than anything, don't sell yourself short for having a lot of interests. I think it's great to be that way. I know from experience that people tell entrepreneurs that they should have a specific focus, that they should identify their clients and have their ideal client. I've never done that, ever. I've never had an ideal client. I mentioned, from custodial workers to CEOs of international organizations. Well, that's not very focused, but it's okay. I love it. I love the diversity of what I do. I personally wouldn't want to do the same thing day in and day out and not have the diversity. And so so I just say kudos to your mom for instilling in you that you can do anything you want. And Jalen, I think that you're going to be successful in whatever you do just by figuring out what puts a fire in your belly and makes you want to do something awesome. So
Thank you so much. And yeah, my mom is pretty great.
my dad is that way too. My dad has always, been kind of my inspiration. So
if I may, I don't know how much time we have, but I also wanted to go back to one of the things that you said about mentorship. I also have been around, like, at FSU, we have the Student Alumni Association, and I am an ambassador for the organization. And one of the things that they instill in us since the very first day was mentorship and how important it is. And honestly, they're right, because it's kind of like the whole idea where how kids will like touch the stove and to see if it's hot or something, but like if your mom tells you that it's hot, then you don't need to like see for yourself. And I think that it kind of applies to mentorship in that regard. But how would you recommend going about looking for that ideal mentor?
first, I think that it's okay to have more than one mentor. And so you can have a financial mentor, a spiritual mentor, a business mentor. They don't have to be in the same field as you. And I think that that's a misconception, that they need to be in the exact same field as you. A really good mentor and coach is not going to just give you advice. They're going to ask you questions, and they're going to help you come to your own conclusions about what's right for you. And so when people come to me and they ask me to mentor them, I ask them some hard questions. And you know, one of them is, how open are you to feedback? And so if you truly want to be in a healthy mentoring relationship, you have to be willing and even encouraging of accepting feedback that may not be what you want to hear. You need somebody who's going to hold you accountable, somebody who's going to stretch you. And so I have seen mentoring relationships that aren't as good, where people are just, you know, like, oh, I've done that before, here's what you need to do. Now that's not the way to be a good mentor. And to be a good mentee, you really need to be the one responsible for setting up the meetings, for asking the right questions, for being prepared, for implementing anything that you came up with that were action items in your previous mentoring meeting. But for me, if I were you, in the networking that you're doing, maybe in the organization you mentioned before, and when you start interacting with people, you kind of just know, like, that's the kind of person I really want to be connected to. Start talking to that person more. Somebody who shares your values, somebody who shares your passion. Doesn't have to be for the exact same thing. And just talk to them a little bit about how they got where they are, and then approach the subject of mentoring.
Okay, thank you.
Well, This was a fantastic presentation and a small but very engaged group. So thank you for attending. And we will be putting this up online and sharing this presentation. So, and I especially want to thank you for being a mentor at Domi Station as well. You're an important part of the ecosystem and the best example of the best mentor. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again, Gabrielle. This is great.
Thank you, Gabrielle. It was nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you too. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Bye.
Run
Thank
into you
you.
again. Bye-bye.